unfortunately.
Huh?
So.
Good, great, good news.
We always love that.
You're doing your job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
You're welcome. Everything's downstairs. We're good?
Yes.
Yeah, good, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you're
I'll
good
see
to
you guys
do
around.
that.
I'm gonna use your name in vain about the parking situation in the
Yes.
intersection later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't mind it.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order.
The recorder,
The recorder is on. If you wish to make comments, would you please identify yourself in the street that you're on, and welcome to the annual meeting. So the first thing on the agenda are the minutes from April 21st. Those were approved by email, but I need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second. Second by Susan. All in favor? Aye. And opposed? April Treasurer's Report. Katya. It's 3, I think, in the...
Thank you. So the village continues to be in a very good financial state. Over the last month, our income has exceeded our budgeted income about fourfold. It came in at about $60,000. Our expenses also came in below what we budgeted, and so we have a surplus of about $30,000
Against budget.
against budget for this month. So we were already in a very healthy financial state that just adds to our cushion there.
These weren't sent out, I don't think, were they?
They were sent up very early.
Yeah.
Early,
They did not
You
come
might have
from
been out of town.
Dan Baden, they came from the office.
They came
Oh.
in the packet for the whole meeting.
oh, I somehow missed those, okay, I didn't see those.
It's a big PDF. You just scroll through it.
And that is
Oh,
basically,
not an Excel spreadsheet.
No.
all the regular attachments were in that.
Okay.
So we need a motion to accept the financial report as presented. All in favor? I motion first, I'm sorry.
Okay. I move to approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Tiffany or Susan, take your pick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose. The 2016 State of the Village. Arthur, on trees.
Trees, yes. I even wrote it up. The Village Council established a tree committee almost 2.5 years ago, January of 2014, and it instructed the committee, and I will read, to assess the state of the tree canopy and, if appropriate, propose policies to remedy identified deficiencies or to otherwise improve the state of the village canopy. And we noted that there was a decline in the number and coverage of trees from a whole number of reasons. Construction, larger houses, larger paved areas, and then just the ordinary passage of time. Trees die, they're subject to storms, to disease, they fall over, and then there is also the cutting for the power lines and the overhead utilities. What we noted, though, and this was a critical point, is that in the last 4 years, there was an increase in coverage despite the cutting down of trees. And it was because mature trees were getting bigger and filling in areas. We looked at the neighboring jurisdictions to see what they did, and they all, not all, several of them have required licenses to take down trees, but that looked to be too costly, too onerous, imposing too much of an administrative burden if you're going to do it right. So we did not want to go that way. We ended up with our first major recommendation is to subsidize the planting of trees on the private properties. And our own ordinances and the state code allows this because the benefits accrue to more than just the individual property owner. They're community-wide benefits. in both the property values, the health effects, the emotional effects. It's kind of surprising at the number of positive effects. So we felt we were on firm legal ground to do this. I have to say, this was a suggestion made by Jane Sperling about 3 or 4 years ago, when she had seen this happening in some of the jurisdictions. And I thought this seems like a very good way to promote trees. And the council committee agreed on that. And we now have adopted this by the council and have budgeted money for this.
In the next fiscal year.
In the next fiscal year. We went over a number of possible species with that we had collected a list from what neighboring jurisdictions did. Went over with our arborist, who eliminated a number because they're subject to disease, or were particularly messy or undesirable, and they're unavailable, or they cost too much. And we ended up with about 10 or 12 trees, a number of oaks, a number of maples, the American beech, American elm. Elm had been wiped out in this country by Dutch elm disease, but new varieties are being bred that are resistant. And the elm trees are beautiful trees, and they're now available in the new stocks. Sweet gum, a number of really beautiful trees on the list. And we will be putting together, Beth is putting together forms to fill out. We will put together a pamphlet showing the trees so people to pick out for their properties. Looking forward, what I'm hoping is that in 20, 30, 40 years from now, people will look back and just look at the area and say, look at all these gorgeous, big, beautiful trees that will have come from this program. Well, let me finish up with saying we had 3 other proposals that the council was not particularly favorable towards. Looking more closely at them, we thought we had a kind of a minimal kind of suggestions, but looking more closely at it, they involved cost and administrative burden to actually implement correctly. Even one as simple as listing trees that were going to be cut down on a building plan, listing their species, would mean hiring an arborist for the resident or the property owner, verifying that with our own arborist, that they're actually doing it, following up to see whether in fact they've done it, and it just looked like, as our arborist said, our proposals could be thought of as the Full Employment Act for arborists. And even though they looked good when we were discussing them, and I thought they had a lot of value, I tend to agree that on further thought there was administrative and monetary burden imposed. But I'm very happy with the program that we have going. And one final suggestion, we've been in existence now for 2.5 years. There's no sunset provision written into the resolution creating the committee, so I suggest we take this opportunity to bring an end to this committee at the end of the fiscal year. Thank you.
And do you want a motion? Do we need a motion to do that?
Yes, we would need one.
Okay, do you want to make a motion to that?
Should I make the motion? I will thank my committee members who are not here tonight for their efforts and their thoughts and their great ideas.
But the whole council thanks them, and you included.
And move that the tree committee come to an end at the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Katya, second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Tiffany, do you want to give us updates on codes and things we did this year?
So it's been a very busy year just as far as getting, I would say, some of our paperwork in order. There were things in place that needed to be updated, as well as some things that we needed to make sure we had on the horizon. And I'll just run through a few of them. This year we put out requests for proposals for our lawn and landscaping contract, a legal compliance contract for snow plowing and building administration, and there are a few more that are on the horizon. And I think what's really exciting about these things is that we had, when we posted them on our website, when we sent them out to residents, when we put them on Maryland Municipal League's website, we got multiple responses for all of them. We were able to review the different responses that came in and then make a decision for each of them. And I think that this is a really good process for us going forward. It allows us to have documentation in place about what the scope of work is for the work that's being done, what we're paying for, and then if there are any problems, how we can remedy those problems. So anybody coming in can get a grasp of, okay, this is what the building administrator is, this is what he's expected to do, this is why, how, etc.
Are you having any trouble hearing? Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
We did also a few policies and regulations that we needed to update based off of our state requirements for data security and Public Information Act compliance. Those were two things that we did. We also did an election retention, a records retention policy that allowed us to go through the files and decide what we needed to keep and what needed to be stored for a few years and then what's going to go to the state. Again, just getting some of the paperwork in order and so that people know, okay, well, these are the expectations we have and how to implement them going forward. And then the code, we've done one code update, which had several different pieces in it, but it was things that were collected over the years. And I think I counted 4 or 5 open meetings in which we discussed what the code update was going to be. We had a hearing. We had great feedback from residents as well as a couple of our committee chairs came in and provided their feedback. And we implemented one change to the code, one amendment, and we're working on a second one, again based off of experience with residents, with our expert contract support, so that the code is more usable for anybody who comes in touch with it. And the last thing I'll just say is all of this is on our website, and I have to give a lot of thanks to Matt and Beth. If you want to see the RFP that we put out for lawn and landscaping, it's on the website. If you want to see our data security policy, it's on the website. And I think that that's a great step for village residents who might not necessarily be able to come here, but who listen to the meeting or check out the minutes and say, hey, I want to see what that contracting policy says. They're able to find it there. So,
Good. Questions? Katya, do you want to talk about lights?
Sure.
You looked at me.
I thought you
Supplies.
Yeah. All right. So last year we picked up the lighting project where basically it was going on for many years. There was a lot of research that has been done historically. So that research was collected and analyzed and presented to the council in a summarized form in terms of which lighting options are really available at the time. The council reviewed that proposal. We also initiated a January village resident survey on to collect feedback from residents on what they thought the best options were. Then the summary was presented in February to the council, and the council at that point made a decision on which lighting option to proceed with. After February, we've notified our lighting consultant that we need to get the final package of the specifications so that we can issue the RFP so that we can bid out the installment of these new lighting fixtures. At this point, the RFP has been drafted, but we're still working with the lighting consultant to get some final details. We basically need to get enough data to a request from the bidders, but at the same time not so detailed that only one company can fit the bill. So we're trying to make sure that we have the best kind of options up to select from. So we expect the final data that would go into this RFP to be received by tomorrow, and hopefully the RFP will go soon after that. We're shooting for the next couple of weeks. All right. In this RFP, we're expecting to include not just the installation of our lights, but also the maintenance component of it. And we want to look at the cost over the next 20 years of everything that is included in the lights. So we're comparing apples to apples, and we can make the best financial decision for the village going forward. The village has set aside about $500,000 for the streetlights project. At this point, the estimates that we have received from our lighting consultant are coming in fairly significantly below that. But, you know, we'll see when we actually get the bids from the various companies.
Good report, thank you. Questions? Susan, do you want to talk about streets?
I would love to. As part of the proposed budget for fiscal year 17, the village has set aside $750,000 to redo the streets and sidewalks. $500 is designated for streets, $250 for sidewalks, gutters, etc. Those funds will be applied toward a comprehensive project to address the repair of streets, sidewalks, curbs, gutters. We're still awaiting information from Washington Gas and WSSC as far as the amount that they will contribute toward repair. But at least, you know, we know that that's the amount that's been set aside because the village is financially sound, because the streets have taken a beating over the past few years with all of this utility work. We're in a strong position to make a higher initial investment in the infrastructure now and hopefully have fewer repairs in the future. The village has been working on a draft RFP with the help of the village engineer, Joe Coutreau. And we've obtained a preliminary list of potential competitors who have done previous work in the local vicinity, if not in Martin's Additions, then in surrounding jurisdictions, and anticipate that we'll get a wide variety of bids. And tentatively plan to begin repaving soon after WSSC completes its work on Quincy Street, which we hope to be in mid-June. Weather permitting, of course, which is always uncertain. Although the actual start date depends on the contractor selected and their various timetables to some extent, and of course, again, weather. We hope to complete the project by fall. In which case, at which time, the streets will all be beautiful, as will curbs, gutters, and sidewalks.
Yes, knock on wood, knock on wood.
Goal.
That's the goal. We're going to be positive.
Aspirational goal.
But they will be beautiful. We've seen it in the past.
Well, I think we've been lucky this year because we've had a really good council, and speaking of knock on wood, hope that continues. We've gotten a lot done, as you've heard, but there's still quite a bit more to be done. I've been away for 3 years, and in that time there's been a lot of changes. We have a new manager and assistant manager, a new building administrator, and I've asked Matt if he would introduce himself so that you would all get a better idea of him and his background.
Sort of in lieu of the traditional manager's report, which kind of does the year in review, since the council has been here for all of it, I'm instead just doing kind of a quick bio. And so I wanted to sort of take the opportunity to introduce myself and also to thank those who have served in the role of village manager before me. So the first person that I did want to recognize is Beth Boa, our assistant village manager, who just in the past month and a half that I've been here has been a tremendous help to me. She's incredibly knowledgeable, supportive, and truly and genuinely cares about the community and the people that live in it. And aside from that, she's also just a kind and pleasant person and just a pleasure to be around in the office. Beth actually served as the interim manager right before me, and she took on and continued to take on the lead in things like the Centennial Committee, the Centennial Celebration, to make sure that that was a success. And she's overseen a lot of other projects and day-to-day stuff, and continues to be an integral part of the office. So I just wanted to say that she's a really great teammate, and I think we should all be really grateful to have her be a part of the village office. I also wanted to thank the others who have preceded me in the village manager role. They helped establish the village office and its role in the community, and each person sort of brings their own personal take to the position, but I think it's important to recognize that each person does have their own strengths and positive contributions, and then we continue to build on that and continue to grow. For me, I was born and raised in Vermont. If you were around earlier, I was wearing a T-shirt that said "locally grown" and it had a picture of Vermont in it. So, kind of proud of my Vermont heritage. I was born and raised there. I went to the University of Vermont and I studied theater and political science. And growing up, yeah, I know the joke I always tell people is that political science or politics is theater. So I studied theater and theater.
It sure is.
Especially this year.
But so growing up in Vermont, on the first Tuesday in March, the state celebrates Town Meeting Day, which is where citizens all throughout the state, they come together in their communities and they discuss local issues in their towns. And one of my favorite professors, political science professor, he wrote a book about Town Meeting Day in Vermont. And one of my favorite quotes in it is, "It's the closest thing we have to Athenian democracy, or just a long day sitting in a hard chair listening to people argue." And I really do love that quote because it sort of underscores the dichotomy of local government and local politics. And there's this romanticism of people coming together, but there's this reality of it being genuinely hard work. And I kind of tell the story to emphasize how excited I am to be here in Martin's Editions. This is really a dream job of mine. Growing up in Vermont really did instill in me the idea that local issues are at the core of government and governance. And government isn't always flashy, and people might have different answers to problems, but I do think that by coming together, by increasing community engagement, we can really find real solutions that can better people's lives. And so that's why 3 years ago, I decided to go back to school and I got my master's degree in public administration from American University, and I concentrated on state and local administration for those reasons. And I took my studies seriously and I worked at various jobs in the nonprofit sector and in the federal government. But now that I'm here working on local issues in Martin's Editions, where the results are tangible and you can see people in front of their houses, the potholes be filled up in front of their yard, or the sidewalk be made straight in front of their yard. That's exactly the reason why I went back to school. So not every day's easy, but it's already an incredibly rewarding job, so I'm excited to be here. And over the weeks and months ahead, I hope to continue to forge a positive relationship in the community. And this sort of goes back to what the council members were saying, but it's one that will be based on respect and continual improvement and transparency. And I know I have a lot to learn in the position, and just about Martin's Editions in general. But I did want to thank everyone here and everybody who listens for their welcoming spirit and their support and their patience as the office and I find my way and settle into the role. So I just encourage anyone to pop in at any time if you're available, say hello, give the office a call, introduce yourself if you haven't already. I'm really looking forward to meeting as many people as possible. And then the last thing that I wanted to say, because I know this has been sort of long-winded, so I apologize for that, is I do look forward to working with the council very much, and I really appreciate them entrusting me with this position. And to reiterate that it's a responsibility, and I don't take it lightly, and my pledge to the council and to everyone in the village is that every day that I'm here, I will work hard to improve my own performance and to improve that of the village office so that it reflects positively on the community, and we're able to work to find solutions where problems problems might arise, whether they're big or small. So as we tackle issues from streetlights to the new streets or those pesky rock boulders, Lynn, on the corner of Oxford and Quincy, I know the village office is going to stay busy and always look for additional improvements that can be made. So I just wanted to thank everyone for welcoming me into Martin's Additions, and it's been a pleasure in just the few weeks that I've been here, and I look forward to continuing the work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your interjection of something that wasn't planned.
Well, and thank you, and also to Beth, who did do Herculean duty while as a manager temporarily. I mean, we're very, very grateful to Doug Lohmeyer, who is a new building administrator since the 1st of July. And also for Wayne, who's not here, but was really an important part of the transition. He holds a lot of historic information, and that's been of great value to us as we've moved through. I also feel lucky that we have, in this past year, attracted a lot of new volunteers, people who have not in the past been active in the community, to the Centennial Committee, which worked really, really hard in making the Centennial. Michelle Malloy, Naomi Nairman, and Susan all were a part. Beth took a key staff role. It was before Matt had started, but Beth did a lot of work and deserves a lot of credit. Our election committee also, which is new this year and has struggled with policy and has now used a lot of hours in order to make the election happy, also deserve our thanks. The ethics committee was a new committee of 3 new volunteers: Jimmy Joyce, Mark Efron, and Celeste, whose last name I'll never be able to say, Biagini, who have all been incredible. Pardon? Okay, and the tree committee, chaired by Arthur, obviously, has also done a lot of good work. And we need to thank the Dan Gardner, who is our village tree supervisor, and Paul Wolf from Integrated Plant Care. And then we need also to thank the person who keeps us on the straight and narrow, Ron Bolt, the attorney, who does a great job of helping us in 100 ways. We're grateful for all of that. We've had a good year, I think, so we're very pleased. We're on to budget. The budget presentation for the new and the old. Tab 5. Yes, do you want to do it? Yeah, or do you want
I think
Arthur?
Arthur was preparing.
Okay, are you ready? Do you want to do the budget? You have done the letter.
I wrote something.
Right.
So let's read that into the record, whatever it was I wrote.
I don't think it's in here.
Do you have the last newsletter?
It's actually, there's, on this table right here. It's also in that table.
Arthur's piece is in the table.
Yeah, because I think it really is a good summary.
So now I know what I'll say.
Now you'll know what to say because you've already said it. Right?
Yeah, I think that as we've already heard in the treasurer's report, we're in good shape. Revenues are coming in higher than we planned. Expenses which for reasons I don't understand, in general, not every item, but overall, are less than we've been allocating. There were a number of changes we had to make for the professional services categories, both the building review and legal. There was a lot of work that was done this year in both of those areas that was not anticipated. It's already been mentioned that we went through our whole code and ordinances, and there's been a lot of building activities going on, and also we're looking at revising the building code to make it more understandable, as well as bringing it more up to date and correcting some deficiencies that were in there. So we overspent in that area. The taxes for the new year, the property taxes are being held at the same old level, so we're not raising taxes. The income taxes are coming in at above projected levels. We are going to have to pay out because of the Supreme Court's Wynn case over a period of years. And this keeps changing, so I'm not going to say anything specific. But it looks very manageable from our part, that the deductions that people made or that they were not allowed to make, and that they will now be able to make, look like they will not affect us all that much. And since it will be paid out we can pay it out over a period of years, the burden will not be great. In fact, we could pay it out as a lump sum. And it's already been mentioned, the two major capital projects coming in the new year, the streetlights and the road paving. We've set aside those funds regularly in past years, as we've had excesses in every year since I was treasurer. Before that, before I came on the council, was just in the years of the last recession, when revenues plummeted and we actually had to go in the hole. We had to dig into our capital base, and to cover spending, we had to raise our taxes. Since then, revenues have recovered very well, and we've been able to put money away every year for all these large projects. And now, hopefully, we'll be spending it. We're planning a surplus this coming year of about $180,000, and will give us both a buffer and put funds into the capital accounts. That's it.
Any comments from resident comments? Steve?
Might as well get up here. First, a couple prefatory things. First of all, I'm delighted, Steve Schmall, Summit Avenue. I'm delighted to hear about the street lighting project, and that it looks like finally there will be actual movement. I had my serious doubts a couple months ago whether anything was going to happen this fiscal year, and now it looks like, at least with the RFP going out, almost certain to go out, that we're heading in the right direction. I'm also glad to hear about the streets. I know the problem there is that so much of it is not within the village's control, that between WSSC and Washington Gas. I did have one question about the street project. Does this involve basically milling and paving every one of the streets?
Look, you're okay. I thought you were going to get beamed.
Well, it probably would have. I would probably deserved it. Does this involve milling and paving, or more limited things on some streets?
The final decision hasn't been made, but it would appear that they will mill at least 2 inches off, and also be looking to areas where repairs need to be made.
Which is meaning kind of the full treatment
to the structural part.
Right.
That we ever really do.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, rather than simply resurfacing in some.
Correct.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. The rest of my comments, and will, are really simply some questions I have, and I apologize because the budget document has been out, and I simply haven't focused any attention on it. But there were, since I had a few minutes, I decided I would take a look at things, and there were a few things that I wasn't quite sure how to read in the budget document. If you'll bear with me, and
Sure.
it may take a little while. The first one is on the permit fees. And part of what's
In income.
yeah, the first few are on income. And what I'm noting is that we're, at this point, have data for the first 8 months of the year, and of course, I have to project beyond that. What I'm noting on the permit fees is that we're only about a third, have about a third of the revenues so far that were projected for the full year. And yet we seem to be projecting not only that we're going to get as much as we got last year, but we're still budgeting $20,000 for next year,
Right.
expecting to get that. And I'm wondering whether that's realistic, because it sounds like if we haven't even gotten, we've only gotten a third of it, that we'll never get anywhere close to the 20,000. Utility property tax, I don't understand. That may be a timed thing and it only comes in once a year.
That's right.
Okay, then I won't even talk about that. Interest, I find it interesting, no pun intended, that again, we're less than a half of what was projected for the full year. I haven't heard any talk about interest rates likely to rise dramatically, and it would seem that the expectation of getting $4,000 next year, when we're probably not even going to get $3,000 this year, is again, it's only $1,000, but it seems unrealistic. On the expenditure side,
I just want you to know that those numbers were all made not by pulling them out of the hat, so to speak, but were looked at with the accountant trying to guess, well, I suppose it is pulling them out of the hat, of where we're going to end up, and trying to be conservatively realistic.
I can understand the council has, thank goodness, been conservative, but I think sometimes realism and conservatism don't necessarily go tightly together. One thing I was surprised, in a way pleased at, is that the printing and mailing costs have gone down to zero because we're doing so much electronic now, and I guess there is a limited printing cost which is basically in-house and doesn't really reflect an additional cost. Given that, I'm a little surprised that you budgeted $5,000 next year for printing and mailing when you didn't spend
The directory.
The directory. We're going to do a new directory.
Okay, because we do that every 2 years.
Right. And there is still money going to be spent in printing and mailing because of the election.
Right.
You know, we've sent quite a bit of stuff out.
So some actually would be spent this
Right,
year.
we're
Okay,
still,
I'm sorry.
right. We are
Missed
doing
that.
more, obviously, in-house.
Next one I noted was in payroll taxes and benefits, where we basically, I think should be, because that's basically month by month, we're at, again, less than half of what we would have for the full year. And what surprises me is that 7,300 so far for 8 months, and the projection for next year for the full year is 23,000, 3 times as much.
Right,
We've had a lot of turnover, though.
Yeah.
Right.
There were times when, when we were not fully staffed.
That explains it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A great deal, yeah. Because there were periods of time, yes. Thank you for explaining that one.
Although there was always someone here.
Yes.
yes.
Could be 2 people, it could have been 1 person,
Oh,
which
yeah.
really affects.
Yeah, but if you were only paying 1, and
Right, exactly.
Yes.
the budget actually provided for 2. Accounting and auditing is one of the relatively few areas where you're talking about an absolute budget increase. And I'm always curious about why, because I know something about what the auditing costs are. They're not huge.
Right.
Why the accountant is charging a lot more.
Right, the accountant had a significant increase this year in his contract.
After several years of no change.
Oh,
Right, yes.
It causes me to wonder a little bit. Of course, I lived in the dark ages when we weren't paying any minimal accounting costs. That this seems to be an area where perhaps we need to look to see. I know we have a wonderful accountant
Right.
and have had the accountant for a long time, and that's worth a lot. It strikes me as 42,000. So, well, minus the auditing costs, which are probably 5,000 or 6,000.
Or 8, I think, around 8.
34. Still
It's
sounds.
still significant.
Right.
We don't disagree with you. And it appears that we're going to put it up for bid.
Oh, okay. That would be, I think, certainly let the chips fall where they may
Right.
on that, but I think that's an excellent idea, and it's consistent with what the council does. The building review and permits thing, I really don't understand this one, because $23,000 realized so far this year, with presumably more to come, and yet you're only budgeting, expecting to get $20,000 next year for the entire year.
Well, it really depends on what is being built in a particular year, and that's very difficult to predict. So if someone has a project that has a lot of variances, it may involve a lot of costs.
So I guess what I'm reading from that is that the council thinks that this year was kind of aberrant, that it was far larger than, and I'm looking at for instance, the figure for all of the previous year, which is only 6,000. So maybe,
We have looked at the span over several years, and that's the number we ended up with.
Yeah, okay.
It seemed reasonable if you looked at the historical numbers.
What did I have? Okay. Municipal operations, I'm just a little bit wondering why we're under $5,000 so far spent this year, and yet the projected budget for the entire year is $20,000.
Tiffany could tell you that.
We are working
Late.
to get invoices in.
I thought that was probably the answer.
Not mentioning any names.
But that's the basic answer. Things are we will be paying the piper.
We
Just
have
not
made
yet.
progress. We have made progress, so we will continue to make progress in that area.
Minor question about the lighting consultant budget for next year. I'm assuming that simply because we have an RFP and we'll have somebody selected, that there will still be some sort of a need, kind of a post-review of whatever ends up happening, and that's where the cost will come. Is that
Yes, yeah.
fair? Because otherwise I would think, why do we have...
Well, and also, if there's no longer a need going forward, we do review the budget more than once.
Oh, yeah,
And we
I know.
could make that
But I'm
amendment.
assuming that when you built the budget, you were assuming that there would be a need. And I was trying to figure out what that need would be.
It is that after the lights are installed, somebody, because the contract calls for certain levels of light,
To measure that.
and somebody has to come through and say, did they meet the levels that they contracted to provide?
Although, just so you know, we are building into the RFP, it has been built into the RFP, that they have to produce what they say they're going to produce, and then they have to prove after the fact that they have produced what they said.
And we need
But
to
it still
check
would be good
on
to
to
have
make
an
sure as part of the
independent
proof.
director. Yeah.
Okay. Street maintenance, I'm a little bit surprised at this, that I'm not surprised that we've spent not very much, because everything is kind of a little bit on hold on street maintenance type of issues. What I am surprised at is that you're projecting $15,000 as the total for this year, you're budgeting that for next year, and this is in a year when you're going to do major street repair, which to me would almost suggest that it's going to be an aberrant year and you're almost really not going to have street maintenance costs.
It includes right-of-way and sidewalks, and so we have a lot of sidewalk repairs that need to be done that we've been sort of putting off.
But I thought that the sidewalks was another thing that was going to be done as far as that.
They aren't in part of the street.
Okay.
No, the street, that's a separate,
So the
separate people.
$250,000 that we basically set aside for sidewalk repair is not going to be part of what's going to be.
No, for street repair.
It's just street and curbs.
There's
I think there's been
500.
confusion, because at
Yeah.
some point, I think when Susan was giving her report, she did say sidewalks and
Oh,
streets.
okay.
Yeah, I did kind of,
I'm sorry?
I think I did merge the two, but it's 500,000
For streets.
for
Well, 500 for streets and 250 for
250
sidewalks.
Sidewalks and
And so basically, it's really the streets that are what we're
They're
talking
going to
about
absorb,
doing in this
yeah.
coming year.
That's my understanding.
No. And finally, and I will come to an end with this, leaf bags, where you've already spent $13,000 this year, and you're only projecting spending $10,000 next year.
It's because we have extras,
A lot extras?
I guess.
And there, we will have the ability to use more advantageous timing for the purchase in the coming year.
I think somebody had mentioned that before, and of course it's slipped my mind. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank Target.
Any other questions? Okay, so the proposed budget has been presented. Can we pass the budget before we pass the tax rates?
Yes.
Okay, so Motion to approve the budget as presented.
No motion.
Second?
Second.
Susan, any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carried. So we are,
Now we got to do the resolution for
the resolutions for taxes for the budget year.
As I noted, there's no change in the tax. We are
Right.
proposing to continue the rate we've had in the past year.
And is the rate in here that we can,
Yes.
It is.
where is, why am I
Right
the-
here.
in that
Resolved.
paragraph? Resolved?
Are you looking at the right document?
Okay.
316.2?
No, I'm on one.
Okay.
Do we have to pass one?
That's
We
that's
just
the
did.
ordinance for the
We just
budget,
did.
which
Oh,
was-
we just
which was
did. Okay, I'm
passed, yeah.
sorry.
Right there.
So resolved. So this is the levy, a tax of .0472 per $100 of assessment. And this is levying tax on personal property. So a motion to approve, to adopt.
No motion.
Second?
Second.
Susan?
Second, Susan.
Okay, question, all in favor? Oppose? That's it.
All right.
Good.
Doug, did you have something you wanted to report? Okay, there is something to report on the buildings, though. We met with, this is a council issue, we met with Mike Conley, who wants to put a porch on, and we've had a long discussion. Well, let Ron explain it.
Sure.
And I would just clarify who met with Mike when, so that it's not.
Sure. It was myself, Doug, and Richard met with the applicant, Mr. Connolly.
And Matt. Did you say that?
I thought I did.
Okay.
To discuss his application, he was informed that he would need a variance for a proposed front porch because it would project into the required front established building line setback. There is pending, as you know, an ordinance to amend the established building line.
Remind me how wide the porch that he wants to put on it?
Doug, you know how wide the porch is?
9 feet.
Well, that
Isn't it?
that's the depth.
Oh, the
The
depth.
the width, I don't know.
No, the
Depth.
Depth is 9 feet, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there is an ordinance pending, and if that ordinance were to be approved, which may appear likely because there were no public comments at the last meeting in opposition, although people could still come out and speak in opposition, it is up for a potential adoption at the June meeting. After adoption,
And can we clarify,
porch.
the amendment makes our established building line piece of the code consistent with the county, so that
more consistent with the
more
county.
consistent, so that residents who are looking to improve existing structures are not penalized or unable to improve their structures, whereas someone who is tearing down a property would have different rules for them. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. If adopted, the ordinance would apply the established building line front setback only to new construction or infill development, only to new houses. Existing houses that are undergoing additions or new porches would not be subject to the EBL front setback. So if that ordinance is adopted, he would not need a variance for the proposed 9-foot front porch. He does not want to wait for adoption, because if the ordinance was adopted, it wouldn't be adopted until our June meeting and then wouldn't take effect until 20 days thereafter.
Unless we chose to act earlier, right?
But yes, I mean, to act earlier, you'd either have to schedule a special meeting, provide notice, and then declare the ordinance an emergency to give it an earlier effective date
30 days,
potentially. No, but yeah, I mean, you could reschedule it for a new meeting. He presented some arguments as to why he believes no variance is required and that he should be allowed to build the porch now. I won't go through all three of his arguments. You may have already seen them. The one that he was focused on tonight is the definition of intersecting street. When the established building line front setback is calculated, you look at all the adjoining lots that are within 300 feet on each side along the same block. But you don't include lots that are beyond an intersecting street. And if I could borrow your diagram, Doug. So the applicant's property is here.
Right.
And he's arguing that this lot should not be included because it is beyond Melville Place. And he argues that Melville Place is an intersecting street. We previously interpreted, based on historical precedent, that it's not an intersecting street for the north side of Raymond because it doesn't intersect that block, but it is an intersecting street for these two blocks.
On the south side.
Mr. Connolly argued that he presented his plans to the prior building inspector, who said it wasn't a problem, he could have the porch, and he further argued that the county would deem this to be an intersecting street
On both sides.
on both sides, which I'm not able to confirm or deny. We'd have to check with the county. It does seem
Doug, do
bit
you know the answer to that question?
Yes.
Does the county, if you don't know the answer off the top of your head, that's fine. Does the county deem Melville Place an intersecting street for Raymond? On
They
both
didn't
sides?
deny his permit, so I'm assuming they didn't, I don't know what they based it on. They issued a permit for it,
Okay.
but I don't know what their reasoning was.
the county does have three different optional methods of determining the EBL. The county has great flexibility, and do you know which method
Well,
they used?
In the county's review of it, because it's in addition to an existing lot, it's exempt from the EBL.
To begin with.
So they didn't even look at it.
Because they've changed their rule, and our proposed change will bring us in line with the county, but ours isn't in place yet.
And how far is the house set back from the street right now?
30 feet.
So it would be under 25 feet with a 9-foot porch.
Say it again, please.
No, no.
He'd be 21 feet away from the curb.
Okay, the code
He would be,
allows a
right, but isn't a
9-foot.
25-foot rule from the curb? For that,
That's the minimum setback,
The
the
porch can encroach
25.
9 feet beyond into the
into the
EBL.
25 feet?
He would need a 4-foot variance, is that right? If you include,
Based on the
Current
way the
code
is
versus
today.
amended. So current code is he would need a 4-foot variance.
right,
As has been proposed to amend, he would not.
he would need no variance, yeah. So he argued that,
Does that answer
again,
your
What Koch is asking, what is the required setback? Not the EBL, but just the setback.
25 feet.
25 feet.
But
So
the
this
house
goes
would
into the
be-
25
The code
feet.
says 25 foot or the EBL, whichever is greater.
and the EBL is greater.
But this will, so
This
the
still
house
goes
is
in within
30
25
feet from
feet.
the curb,
Yeah,
plus a 9-foot porch. Now, the porch is only 21 feet from the curb.
yeah.
Correct. But if you apply the EBL the way the law is today,
Yeah.
the EBL is at 34 feet.
Right,
And
but-
if you back off 9 feet from that, you're at 26, so he's encroaching.
Yeah, but even without the EBL, he's
Yes, I'm not-
encroaching within the
You
25
see what I'm
foot.
saying?
But
It's
you're allowed
closer than 25
Oh,
feet.
you're allowed to,
Yes.
okay.
9
But you're
feet.
allowed to 9 feet.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
A porch is allowed to encroach 9 feet
Into the 25
beyond
foot.
the front setback.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so
okay.
really the
Discussed
setback is
last
like
month.
16 feet.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what we discussed.
Well, just for
For a
porches.
Because it's not an enclosed structure, right? That was the, it's not
Right.
enclosed.
So what, so you had, did you come up with a tentative solution?
Well, of course, one option, if you want to help the resident out, would be to recognize that the code may be about to change, and if the applicant was told that the plans were okay, and then based his plans on that representation, you could decide to allow this interpretation for 1 month.
Could he apply for a variance that becomes moot after the code changes?
Yes, but even the variance, in his opinion, would be too much of a delay. He states that he wants to commence stuccoing the house, and he can't begin the stuccoing until the porch is in, and if he has to wait a month or...
What's the variance timeline? We give neighbor notice, is it 21 days?
We give 20 days notice. We have a
so
public
that's that
hearing.
solution. Okay.
I mean, we'd be past...
You could save some time, but...
Right.
But I mean, we'd be past the 30, if we looked at the calendar now, and we added 20 days, and had a variance hearing, we'd be past the 30-day window of introduction from the code amendment at that point. We could just schedule, without having a variance hearing, we could schedule a council meeting to have a hearing on the code amendment.
Right. But then there's still another 20 days unless we
unless we make an emergency.
So when was we first adopted this at the last meeting?
Introduced. At the April meeting.
April. And what was that date?
Because we didn't have 30 days between the April meeting and tonight, we had to schedule the formal action on the ordinance for the June meeting.
Right. But if we did it, what was the date of the last meeting?
April 21st.
21st.
So 30 days from there.
So you could meet on May 21st.
May 23rd. The 21st is a Saturday.
But also, if you looked at this confusion about whether or not to count Melville, if you put that into the mix, then it seemed to me, I mean, well, you can explain that.
Yeah, sure. So again, you could decide to allow the applicant's interpretation for 1 month until you revise the code. That portion of the code could be clarified so that the same argument doesn't come up again. The argument is our code says we look at the lots that are in between intersecting streets. He argues this is an intersecting street even though it doesn't cut through the block. He says the county deems it an intersecting street, and when our code was adopted in 2007, the planner we hired to write the code borrowed that provision almost verbatim from the county code. So I mean that would be a useful fact to pin down if in fact the county does use that interpretation. It does strike me as odd because the general purpose of this requirement is to establish a uniform setback of houses along a block. And this is a whole block, notwithstanding that there's a T street on the south side. And if you look at a map of the village, that interpretation would have a great impact throughout the village. There are several of these so-called T streets in the village. If we excluded any house, on the other side of a street, the number of eligible houses would be greatly reduced, and there's a couple examples where you may in fact have no other lots to consider. But the impact of the interpretation would probably be limited. Probably be one project before you change the law potentially, and once you change the law, it would have been allowed anyway, assuming the ordinance passes.
So how can we?
Well, if you can vote right now to decide whether or not you want to allow that interpretation for this project.
For the intersection street or the
intersection street.
I would rather not do that. Is there a way without, because that makes changes for the future.
It does, but only until the ordinance is acted upon at the June meeting.
Oh, so we could make a provisional interpretation that would then
and then we need also then to put in an ordinance that clarifies it.
Right, we'd add a few words to clarify that we don't consider T streets to be intersecting streets for the north side of the block.
Okay.
So technically, there's nothing that do we have to vote on something? Or we can say the council
You can agree by
interprets.
consensus, yeah, and
Right.
instruct Doug to issue a permit.
Okay.
Okay.
At this time. So there's no, but we could then say we want you to amend the pending amendment
Yeah.
to address the issue. And I would like
Clarify.
to clarify.
Right.
Yeah, and clarify with the county, what the
Yes.
county actually does.
Well, but I think we need to clarify how we're interpreting it.
Right, yeah,
Yes.
at this point, if you're going to allow this interpretation, it won't matter in the future what the county does. You can decide what you want to do.
Right, right.
With the amendments in June.
Yeah.
But
So-
I'd like to see what the impact would be, so that when we make sure our code is clear for whoever is
Right.
reading it,
Sure.
that what is that impact going to look like?
Do we have any instances in the past when we've looked at maybe establishing the building codes when someone applied for a variance or?
And that when
We made an
we've
exception?
changed we've not made.
Yeah, we've had only 3 variances, as
And
I
they've
recall.
all had to do with established building line.
Right, but I can't tell you off the top of my head whether there has been another project where we have extended the calculation beyond the T Street.
think
I
we
would
have
guess
results.
there would be, but I can't say for
So
sure.
It doesn't
I would
apply to the
say-
last variance.
I would say make the provisional interpretation.
Yes. And bring the wine.
Yeah, bring the wine? Oh, shoot.
We left it.
They're done.
I think there's wine in
So
here.
let's finish
so does
this.
everybody-
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
we
let's finish this
we have a
first.
moment to finish one
Right.
thing. Okay. So we just come up with an agreement?
Just the chairman
resolve?
needs to instruct the building
Building.
administrator.
Okay.
to
Building
go ahead
administrator,
and
look
do
up. Listen up.
issue the permit under this narrow change.
Well, it's a provisional interpretation of
Right.
intersecting.
These will apply for the permit.
Right.
That's what we issue.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Good. Is that the last
So
item?
any other comments from the audience? Otherwise, we're down to the announcement of the election results.
Good timing.
Wow.
Perfect.
Perfect. Not like last year.
I doubt that's.
Nothing is like last year.
It was a lot cooler than it was last year. And we do thank Brooke
In
Taylor
more
for
ways
the
than
lovely
one.
surroundings that we created.
Yes, first of all,
Oh,
the
great.
election, I don't think this,
I don't think
No.
that's no.
Okay.
all right, first of all, the election committee thanks Brooke Tiller for providing a really hospitable space to do our work this year. I would note that we had 228 ballots cast, both at the election and write-in, so that's a total of, I'm sorry, I said write-in, but I meant absentee. So absentee and in-person voting came to 228 ballots.
So both, all together.
Altogether, yes. So the results of the election are, for Arthur, 168 votes, for Susan, 169, for Tiffany, 179. There were some write-in candidates who in total received 33 votes. The election committee excluded people who were deceased, such as Larry, Curly, and Mo. And also people who did not...
I think that's great.
People who did not own property, as near as we could tell, in the village, such as Angela Merkel and Hillary Clinton. The election committee would note that there was a landslide in favor of the incumbents and would encourage all residents who wish to participate in the process that perhaps rather than electing dead candidates, that they might consider running for council if they'd like to see a change. And that is our comment and our results.
Thank you, thank you. Congratulations to the incumbents.
What were the total number of ballots?
228.
228.
And was there, did you have a breakdown of absentee versus in
I
person?
believe there was roughly 21-ish.
Okay.
Don't hold me to that exact
I could give you the numbers. And there were
Okay,
34 absentee ballots were requested, 21 were returned.
okay, 21
Our
absentee.
system did work very, very well.
Good, great, great.
Turned off and locked up?
Yes.
Also,
Okay.
There may be a couple of missing lamps, but
You'll find them at the intersection of
Okay, then we're done. Motion to adjourn. Oh,
What?
what do I have to do?
Can we talk about the lease?
Oh, yeah.
In
Yes.
Are we
closed
talking about
session?
that in an open session or in a closed session?
Well, I think that's beyond our scope.
Thank you all. The election committee had a great time
Thank
working on the
well,
regs.
Thank you, election committee.
Thank you.
The council.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. And we look forward to your meeting afterwards, the summary, you know, like how it all went and what changes you would make.
Right.
And,
We're going to have a follow-up committee meeting.
right.
We'll let you know.
Otherwise known as Party Atlanta.
Well, it has to be an open meeting that we invite everybody.
and we will circulate tomorrow. So Beth, tomorrow, right, put together a little tabulate, including Larry Crowley. Because there are some people who
Check that vote.
yes, because everybody should know who received a note.
So you're going to send, did you say the election committee was going to officially send something in writing to Beth on that?
Yes.
Okay.
We will send it to the council. We'll let you send it out to the council.
And when we say the election committee, we mean Marty.
For this purpose.
For this purpose.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. And you, when you counted several times, and you came to the same answers, same results?
We were good.
Good,
I'm
okay.
an economist. We're good.
You can
Good.
keep your job for another year.
Okay.
Yay.
2 years.
I just want to thank Brent and Matt especially because they were superb. Thank you guys for all your work. And your graphic design help and all of it, I mean, throughout this entire process.
If anybody asks,
Yeah.
not one of the spouses of the, I'm kidding, I don't really know who, but none of the spouses, I would suppose, voted for their candidate. And so, Arthur, if you lost by one vote to Susan, discussion at home to have.
It was a secret ballot.
It certainly was. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
you all.
Thank you.
We'll give you the complete breakdown.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Matt, I need to sign something for the...
Yes.
Here.
There we go.
Oh, that's it. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
We need to off.
Turn off the,
All right, so we adjourn.
Okay, so meeting adjourned. Oh, wait, we have to pull the raffle
oh, the
ticket.
raffle ticket.
First.
Oh, Leanne.
Hey, Leanne.
Leanne.
Well, not yet, not yet. I just got a quick comment.
Night.
Good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Congratulations, you are the winner
I won the raffle.
Is this a closed meeting or is it not?
Well, we haven't noticed the closed meeting. This just came up.
Okay,
So I'll just give you a quick note and
Is the
then you
recorder
can think about it afterwards. All right?
okay.
Wait till Tiffany comes back.
Not necessarily.
No?
Tiffany, if you don't get in here, we're going home.
Are we closed?
No, it's fine.
May I please go to the restroom first?
No.
No, I have to go too, and I'm holding you.
I can't believe we've
I
got
just emailed
one sentence you want to make and they can't even wait.
It is just one sentence. Maybe a compound sentence.
Chocolate.
Yeah.
Anybody else want chocolate?
Yes, I guess we have to have it.
I'm glad I have that on the recording that I need to go to.
Is the recording
So
off?
embarrassed that I said that.
Beth, is recording off?
No, it's not.
No, it's still
We're
on.
still in open
Oh, we're
session.
still in open session.
Yep.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Well, what about if you give your one sentence compounded and then people can read it in the minutes?
Arthur?
No, thanks.
The other council members.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, all right, yeah, so the landlord hasn't responded to our letter. I would suggest trying to hound him But then if he elects not to respond, we'll have to decide how to proceed.
Do we have any recourse?
To give the options, well, sure. I mean, you don't have to accept a new lease. You can find alternative space somewhere.
And not next door.
Right.
Okay, what are we talking about?
I just wanted to let everybody know that the landlord has not responded yet to our letter. And so I would suggest hounding him.
I think you should hound him.
And I mean, it's obviously sent to the same address where the rent checks are sent, right?
We sent it to two addresses because we weren't sure. We sent it to the address that the rent checks are sent to, and then the address that I think maybe you had put on the initial draft on it, which was the address when you do like a Google search of Shirazi Enterprises. So,
Did you have a phone number for him?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Maybe call as well. And then if the landlord doesn't respond, you have to decide what you want to do. You could renew the lease. You could hold over at the current rent.
Is it not
Or you
lawful
could-
to just
you
say
could leave.
silence is concurrence? Come on!
Squatters.
There's notice. There's notice.
No, we requested an amendment. He's got to sign off on the amendment.
Come on, crafty lawyers. Silence is concurrence. Can we send him a letter and say silence is concurrence?
I think you just need to hound him for a while. They have never responded.
Well,
So,
right. That's why I'm raising the point that if he elects not to respond, you've got
What
to
do we
decide
do?
what you want to do. You can continue the status quo. You can exercise the option to renew at the higher rent. You can hold over at the current rent. But then if you're
Can we
a
lawfully
holdover
start
tenant,
deducting
he
our-
can kick you out with 30 days notice.
Can we lawfully start deducting our extra expenses from our... No. Not even with the... Oh, I thought that was up.
No, it's not.
Okay, we have to turn
All
that
right.
off, then we...
So
Okay.
you think about it. We can talk more about it
Right.
later.
Got it.
All right. We are adjourned.